adaptive gameplay that we need to be aware of, which is how we will be able to improve or make a better decision to achieve better work-life balance. So we are all set. I see a few people already joining in. So thank you very much. Please do share whatever questions you get in the chat box, and I will pick them up at the end of the session so that the flow is maintained. So if we're all set, let us start by understanding the truth and meaning of what work-life balance actually stands for. So balancing our professional and personal life is very challenging, especially given the current situation. The difference between your personal life and professional life is almost blurred. So it makes it a little bit difficult in order to achieve the type of work-life balance you want. But it is also important to understand it is essential to keep working towards achieving a proper work-life balance, because most often, especially if you're starting out in your career or relatively early in your career, work might just take precedence over anything else in our life. So our desire to succeed professionally sometimes can push us to set aside our own well-being, which makes creating an harmonious work life or working towards achieving a better work life balance and integrating it with your daily life very critical. So, to start with, what exactly work life balance means, in simple terms, it can be said as the state of equilibrium where a person can focus both on his personal commitments as well as professional commitments without the two overlapping on each other or creating friction in your life. And some of the common reasons why we have a poor work-life balance is attributed to perhaps increased responsibilities at work, especially since we are all working from home, working longer hours, increased responsibilities at home, having children, not having this distinction between your personal space and your workspace, and so forth, so forth. So there is not one particular reason that can be attributed because we all lead unique lives. So there will be a host of different reasons that come up which might lead to a poor work-life balance. So what are the advantages of having a good work-life balance? I would say the clear and obvious advantages would be less stress. Like we are all stressed right away, so we need to have something which will give us the necessary entertainment, the necessary recharge time, the necessary downtime to stay off from the screen. So less stress is one of the most important advantages of maintaining a good work-life balance. Then there's a lower risk of burnout, where we don't really have a differentiation between your personal space and your workspace. So you tend to get confused, you tend to get irritated, and it will also lead to a lot of different psychological effects. So that eventually will lead to a greater sense of well-being. So achieving work-life balance is good both for your work life as well as for your personal life. So this is in general the truth about work-life balance, and there are many people who say it is just a myth. But what I really feel is that if you are aware and you focus on understanding the truths behind work-life balance, I will say you will definitely enjoy achieving it as much as you will enjoy treading the path towards getting better at managing your work and life efficiently. So the term efficient is critical to understanding why we need to get past certain myths, why we need to start trusting in ourselves, and eventually go to a place where there is an ideal balance between your work as well as your personal life. And consequently, if you're an employer, there is definitely a greater benefit in committing to providing environments where you promote or support work-life balance for your employees, because ultimately it saves on your costs. You will have a fewer experiences or fewer cases of absenteeism. You will have a more loyal and enjoyable workforce. You will have better options to provide for your employees and flexible work schedules is something you can definitely tap into to ensure your employees have a great work-life balance. So let's quickly move on towards understanding what are some of the top myths that you might have heard from your peers, your teachers, your colleagues, or in general from the society, because some of these facts are, or I would say I have experienced some of these facts for myself, wherein when I started my career, these were some things which were clearly passed on from my grandparents to my parents, and they passed it on to me. So let us quickly start identifying some important myths that needs to be busted so that you are set up for success. So, what is the first primary myth? It's not actually about achieving balance. So, work life balance the term might be slightly misleading, but ultimately, it's not about achieving balance because balance doesn't really exist in the real sense because life happens, life is unpredictable, you're not sure of the events that will come through, so it's an adaptive gameplay. So it's not about 50-50 divide, or it's not about dividing your time as 8 hours for work, 8 hours for personal life, and 8 hours for sleeping. No, it doesn't happen because some days you will have more work, so you might have to extend your work time. And probably during the holiday season, if you're efficient, you might have a slightly lesser work hour. So you might get more time to spend with family. You might get more time to sleep. You might get more time to recharge. So there will always be times, when your work might intrude into your personal life because it's inevitable sometimes. Sometimes it is the need of the hour. You need to do it so that in the future your results are good. So it just doesn't mean you're always 100% sure about the 50-50 divide. So you might be wondering, Shreyas, if balance itself doesn't exist, then what is the solution? Like, how do we ensure we are having that ideal situation where we don't really compromise either on our work and our balance? Just stay tuned until the end of the live stream where I'll share a few tips on how to achieve better work-life balance. So the next biggest myth, as you might have all heard, either from your teachers or your parents, people say life needs to be compartmentalized. Like you need to be a great planner, you need to do X amount of work in Y amount of time and finish it by Z deadline. Well, that just be honest to yourself. I don't think fitting it all in that exact time frame is how life goes on. No, I don't think so, because this long-standing mentality of 8-8-8 divide and the term of 50-50 between work and life, I think it just doesn't fit into this modern world where we are digitally connected. So we are all connected 24 hours a day. So it's not possible to evenly divide this particular time, saying that I'll just dedicate 8 hours of work. And there's another reason, which will be one more myth that I'll share in a little while. So there is always this trade-off, when you're always working in a team. I'm not sure. I've seen people working alone. Yes, some do it because it really fits well into their particular job role. But essentially, we are in a team, so it's impossible to divide the time evenly. And instead of forcing yourself to compartmentalize, I would say prioritize your task and divide your time based on your current priorities. Because if you're approaching a deadline, then you might have to put in a few extra hours to ensure that you're well ahead and you're staying safe, and not keeping the tasks until the deadline. Or you might just miss out on quality time with your family, which occasionally is okay because you have to just understand that some works need prioritizing. And once you meet the deadline, please do go ahead and celebrate it with your family, with your friends, take a vacation, and just understand how you can make up for that quality time spent on work. So this way of having a mindset where you try to compromise and compensate it suitably, I think that will help you achieve better work life balance. The next myth is people say you can have everything. Like you create a schedule that allows you to exercise, you spend time with your inner circle, you get your work done, and also get the required amount of sleep, which, in my opinion, sounds too ideal because there will be some sort of a compromise here and there. Because if you say, I'll commit to 1 hour exercise, on some days you might just be able to do 30 minutes. If you say, I'll spend 3 hours of quality time with my family, you might end up spending just 90 minutes. So there is always trying sort of compromise because you have to adapt to your life situations. So you will have to probably check in on your remote team. Like we all probably in the IT sector are working remotely currently. So it's the purview of the respective team leads and the team members to just get in, understand what is going on, check in on each other, or you might have to speak at a conference, or you will have to go out of town to meet someone. So there will always be some sort of compromise. And I think there's this quote from Evernote's CEO, Chris O'Neill, who has stated that the truth is that it's not easy balancing work with family because ultimately there will be requirements of travel, there will be requirements of you putting in some extra hours to get something across to your client. You might have to, probably devote your Saturday for your own well-being. Like if you are following a hobby, you might need some extra time. So you have to pick it up either from the work hours, or you have to pick it either from your family time, or you either pick it from wherever you can create space from. So there will always be some sort of a compromise in your life, and don't fall for the trap that that compromise is bad, because ultimately there will be time where you can make up for those extra hours spent and also start having that fulfillment where you know that you're 100% committed to your work when it demanded, and you're also taking care of your family when that became a priority. So understand that there is an adaptation that is going on, which is constantly changing, because what stays today will not be the same tomorrow and will not be the same next week. So trying to stay adaptable and flexible will really help you set on the path of making greater progress towards achieving an ideal work-life balance. This is one thing which probably you might have heard from either your coaches. If you're taking up a sport, people will say, yes, time management is something which you should focus. You have to have proper management of time. You have to schedule it to the end moment. To be frankly speaking, I'm all for time management because it has certainly worked wonders for me. But at the same time, it kind of feels slightly outdated to meet the current expectations of hybrid work culture, which probably will happen in a couple of years. Or it is, some of the techniques where we put on a pedestal were created before we connected 24/7. So the digital world has kind of made it a little bit tough for implementing all these vast techniques related to time management, because I wish I could completely unplug to free my distractions or unwind. But if I consider my own coaching practice and as a business owner, I can't definitely go completely off the grid because my team is answerable to me. I'm answerable to them in the way of giving them necessary instructions, giving them the feedback on what needs to be improved. So as a business owner, perhaps you can't get off the grid. And as a solution provider, which is as an employee, you're providing solutions to a customer, things happen. So you can't just go out of the grid completely. So time management probably is not the best answer to all these situations. But fret not, because there is a counter to all of this, which is to being highly prioritizing and select how you would like to spend your time, given that quality rather than focusing on the quantity. So spend energy on the right actions at the right time, which brings down to the basics of what we were discussing, which is awareness. So you need to be really aware of where your energy needs to be spent, where you can really delegate your tasks, and what is the right time to do it. because as a business owner, there will be specific time where I can delegate it to my team members, and there will be times where I need to handle it on my own. So being aware and being mindful about what actions I take will help you get better at managing your time rather than just focusing on all these time management techniques, which in my opinion is not totally wrong, but I just feel is slightly outdated to meet the requirements of the digital world. The next biggest myth is to understand that technology will not give you more free time, because this is one of the most common misconceptions I hear from my clients. They say, oh, I use technology, so I'm saving more time. I totally agree, because automation has definitely made life more comfortable, but it's not guaranteed to add more hours to your day magically, because the time ultimately at the end of the day will be 24-hour, irrespective of whether your technology works or not. So you can use, probably like in my on my website, I've used chatbots to handle necessary customer service inquiries so that it doesn't intrude into my work life. So what it has done is it has just eliminated certain tasks, but in no way has it helped me, get more time magically, because ultimately I need to do the work that has been assigned. I need to take care of this chatbot so that it works seamlessly, efficiently. I need to keep improving. There might be some smart suggestions that the computer or artificial intelligence can give, but at the end of the day, you still need to interact with your people personally. You need to plan your own productive meetings. You need to get ahead of yourself and start implementing certain things, which all requires time, which is 24 hours in a day. So technology is only an assistant. It in no way adds more time to you, or it doesn't make the day stretch more than it can be. So the final myth is what employees enjoy. So some people say you need to be very traditional and just give employees, or just take care of what they care about most. So while employees enjoy flexibility, it's not always on top of their list. Like for most of them, they want meaningful work, they want recognition, they want an empathetic culture where people are more understanding. So balance again is very subjective to you and your individual team, and it is also essential. So making sure that your team knows that they fit into a larger picture. And once again, I stress on this point, making them aware of what their responsibilities are and how they fit into that larger picture, acknowledging their hard work, trying to give them recognition of where they deserve, and being empathetic. I think it trumps all the other work-life balance myths I already suggested. Because once you do these things, people are bound to be more happy. You know what your employees want, so you're showing an indication that yes, you're listening to the people, you're able to understand what they need, and ultimately you're doing everything in your part to make it a lot better to everyone involved, because ultimately it is again very, very, very subjective. It is dependent on what is the composition of your team, the number of people in your team, and ultimately understanding that work-life balance doesn't really exist in actual terms, but it is a continuous way of life where you keep on improving each day, trying to adapt and not stressing about those few days where you might just get this balance totally wrong. Because ultimately we are humans, we make mistakes, but the imperative again falls on the fact that you're aware, you're mindful, and you take the right actions. So these are some of the common work-life balance myths that I'd like to share for today. So before we move on to the Q&A, I'll just give you some few tips, which is very generic because the situation differs from person to person, organization to organization, and team to team. So some of the tips that I've followed personally to get better at achieving an ideal work-life balance is to remain flexible. So what do you mean by flexible is to just find out what has worked for you in the past, where where exactly are you able to focus, and what has worked for you in the past, what are the times where you can remain more productive over the entire day. So for example, I'm most productive between 10 and 3 in the morning and afternoon. So 10 and 3 are my best working hours. So I schedule all the important meetings that needs my 100% attention in those 5 hours. The second thing that you can really do is identifying resources that benefit you. So it might be meditation practices, it might be sporting activities, it can be going to the gym, whatever works for you that eventually adds to you feeling wholesome, you feeling fulfilled, you feeling better, you feeling active. So it can definitely pay off to identifying resources and activities that you enjoy doing the most and giving a dedicated set of time. Say, I don't say you have to say, okay, on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, I'll hit the gym. That is not dedicated time. What I mean by dedicated time is saying that you will commit 2 hours a week irrespective of whatever day it is, whenever you can find those 2 hours, you'll put it across and do the activity you like to be the most. Um, what else can you do? So, trying to divide your tasks into smaller, actionable chunks. So, for example, you might have a larger goal where you say, I will meet my target in X amount of time with Y amount of resources. So, you start putting that as a main goal and then divide it into 5 action steps, which is very, very specific. So you can't just say, okay, it's X amount of time, so I'll divide X by 5 each day and I'll put in X by 5 amount of time, because again, we've said that is not how life works. You can't evenly divide things. So make it as specific as possible, make it measurable. So you have something to identify or you have something to benchmark to say that, yes, you have made that progress. Make it actionable. So it has to be acceptable to you and you're able to take action. Make it resourceful. So you have the right resources to fall back into in case you are unsure of how to proceed, and make it time based. So when I say time based, just divide it into, say you have to commit X hours over 4 weeks. Just identify how much is those measurable, actionable, acceptable time hours for you to divide. So week one might be, say, let us keep X as 40 hours. So you might say week one is 15 hours, week two is 10 hours, week three is 5, and week four is 10 again. So try and understand, be aware, have this small actionable goals which will be very specific, and you will ultimately see that you're already progressing on achieving this work-life balance. I will say it is really hard initially. I've confused myself with a lot of different things, and it has been a good eye opener. But ultimately, what I would say is, after putting a few hours into practicing this technique, it gets better. It really gets better, and you will start finding that it actually saves you some time, which then gets recycled into doing whatever needs prioritizing. If you're a manager, so this is very important, know what your employees are striving for, because not everyone has the same work-life balance goals. For me as a coach, work-life balance is totally different from you as an employee or an employer. So each employees will have their own objectives. So take some time to just talk about their objectives with everybody, determine what you can do to help them, just understand what might really benefit. For example, some might benefit from working from home remotely for, say, 3 to 4 days a week and coming to the office 2 days a week. Or some might prefer altering their daily work schedules, like on Mondays they work from 9 to 5, on Tuesdays they might work 10 to 6. So just give them this sort of flexibility, understand what their objectives are, and just be open-minded and flexible to understand and meet their objectives as much as possible, because ultimately it's again a compromise. So if they have 5 objectives, try and help them with 2. That will definitely start making a huge impact, not just on the employee but on the organization as well. So just make it clear. So communication, right? You need to just let your employees know what are the options on the table, Don't confuse them with too many options. Make it clear, specific, concise, and say these are some things you can choose from, and I will be happy to endorse that particular schedule for you. And you can just start working on it and see if it works for you or not. So, finally, last but not the least, it is always important to keep yourself ahead of the curve because work-life balance is ever emerging, it's ever changing. So you need to really understand what are the latest trends for you to work on, because what works today for your employees or what works today for you will definitely change, say 1 year from today, because the pandemic, a very big example of how things changed all of a sudden. So just keep your work-life balance initiatives as fresh as possible and offer in-demand benefits. Offer to yourself or ask your employees if they can offer benefits which change with time. And as an employer, just consider putting out some options in front of your employees. And ultimately, last but not the least, you can always approach a coach who's just giving this talk to understand how specific you can make your work-life balance goals and how you can try and differentiate what really works for you, what needs improvement, and what are some things that you need to just chuck it out into the dustbin so that you achieve or reach the ideal work-life balance. So yes, so we have taken almost 25 minutes to discuss about work-life balance. So I've given you the definition of what work-life balance means. It is a state of equilibrium where a person can focus both on his personal objectives as well as professional objectives without the two overlapping with each other and causing friction in your life. And we have also discussed about 7 myths that might have been passed down. So few of them are assumptions, few of them are limiting beliefs, which I've tried to give it in a concise way so that you are aware of what to check, what not to really follow, and experiment what works for you, and ultimately a few tips on achieving the ideal work-life balance, or at least starting to work to reach that ideal work-life balance. So this is me, Shreys Kaushik, ending this particular discussion on this note. I would love to check the chat box for your few questions. Just so please keep them going. I will take up one by one and give you the best answer possible. So we do have Krupa who asks, what are some books you read to become more productive and maintain a work-life balance? Krupa, there is not one specific reading resource that I can suggest because what works for me might be totally different for you. However, what I really feel is trying to first experiment, browse a few blogs rather than going through the books, because a book of say 200 to 250 pages has vast amounts of information which can get confusing if you don't understand it right. However, what are some key resources that has worked for me? Well, I really go through Forbes and Harvard Business Review blogs on work-life balance, on time management, on understanding what are the key benefits employees can have, what the psychology behind understanding what works for me and what does not. So these two blogs are filled with amazing information and are very specific and is bite-sized so that you don't get overwhelmed with all those big information that the author puts out. You can definitely go through Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's one fantastic book which will help you understand how to divide your large goal into small chunks and what can be the psychological approach towards achieving a better productive life. It doesn't really differentiate between work and life. It just answers about productivity. So Atomic Habits by James Clear, I think, is a great resource to start in addition to the blogs from Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and also some Medium writers. So I hope that answers your question. So Lavanya, do you feel a 4-day week is better than 5-day work week? Again, very subjective, because ultimately what works for me is to divide my time equally and make it as less as possible throughout the week, and probably take some time off in bigger chunks at the end of every quarter. So what I do is I divide my work hours equally, not equally, but more or less in the same ideal range of 8 to 10 hours from Monday to Saturday. I take Sundays completely off, and every quarter I just take a week off to make up for all those extra time, so that it just sits well with me. So if you feel 4-day work is the best for you in terms of productivity, in terms of achieving your deadlines, in terms of being fulfilled, in terms of enjoying your work and leaving the other 3 days for pursuing your hobbies, your personal time, your recharge time, your family time, then yes, by all means, do a 4-day week. Because ultimately, what really matters the most is, one, you meet your deadlines as an employee, you deliver quality work, you don't miss out on conversations with people, your customers. If you're in the service based industries, you need to understand their viewpoint. And yes, problems arrive without saying. So sometimes you might have to be available for a call, probably even Friday evening. So just understand what works for you, experiment, because everything is very unique. So give it a try, see if it works. If it does not, make changes, adapt, be flexible. Again, Krupa, how do you manage your time better? Any tips and tricks that we can do in our day to day? If I have to speak from my own experience, how I manage time is by scheduling. Because I've understood that scheduling is one of my key strengths. Being responsible is one of the top 6 Clifton strengths. So Clifton strengths is one of the assessments that you can take in order to understand what are your top 10 strengths, where you can actually feel better, you feel confident, you feel that it is acceptable to you. So on that scale, like, 1 is responsibility. So if I commit to something, like if I schedule something, I will ensure I stay to it, and it's all very carefully planned. The second way I manage my time is to take necessary breaks, schedule or probably reserve some hours. Like I said, I understand that 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. are my most ideal productive hours. So I schedule all the important meetings, all my customer calls, all my engineering calls between 10 and 3, because I know that I can be very productive there, and it's much better to be aware and give your 100% attention, so that you don't end up repeating the same job. Because repetition takes time, so you have to allocate extra hours. So I try to understand where my productive hours lie, so that I do the job right the first time, so that job is done and dusted at that particular point of time. The next time management hack that I find really interesting is to just remain flexible. Like, if a meeting comes, just think if you can take it at that particular point of time. If you cannot, just go ahead and reschedule without second thoughts, because thinking again takes time. If you start overthinking, you end up branching out to so many different thoughts. Again, it's time consuming, so you can't pull yourself back and start focusing on the task at hand. So what I do is I really start and try and understand if I can take up a particular meeting if it comes up unexpectedly, or if there is some meeting that is already scheduled, and if I feel that I'm not able to give 100%, I just go ahead, hit a message and say, I apologize for having to postpone this meeting. Can we just have another time to chat, because I don't feel like I gave my 100%. So being empathetic, being understanding of each other, I think that really works. And the ultimate goal or an indirect impact would be to save some time on doing a more productive task, rather than just sitting there and just feeling sorry for something which you didn't attend to, or it was beyond your control. So understanding what is under your control and what is not. So it just falls down to the basics: being aware, being mindful, and just trusting that you do have the power to say yes or no to something, and being unapologetic about that. So finally, Ganesh, what tools do you use to track your goals? Ganesh, there are a lot of amazing tools that are present. So you can browse Trello, which currently I use, which is a card-based system that allows you to add specific tasks, assign it to team members, track the progress, where it goes, and where exactly is it in the pipeline. There is this app, Notion app, which is quite fantastic. You will get amazing templates if you're on Twitter. So you can browse through them. You can download a few templates and start making it, customizing it to fit in your needs. Then there is management apps called Asana and Dubsadi or something. So there are amazing options. If you're good at Excel, like Ankur Warikoo does, probably you can just create your own Excel sheet and start tracking things. But if you have a team and you want to coordinate, I would highly suggest you to look at Trello, Notion, Asana, or any other management app that you find might help you achieve your work goals. So ultimately, the best solution that I offer is to track it in your mind, because you know it, you know where the progress is. If it is individual, of course. If it is a team-based task, then yes, by all means, go and check Trello or Notion. But if it is your personal goals, please do start practicing to track everything in your mind so that it stays as personal as possible. So I think that's the end of the questions. So if there are no more questions, I think we will take leave of this meeting. I wish you all a great week ahead. Take care. The situation is definitely something which you can manage easily, understand what works for you, what does not, improve on your techniques, be more aware, be more mindful, and I'm always open to having a chat. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. However, for the next 10 days, I'm currently trying to just wind down before I travel back to Germany. So I might not be able to respond immediately, but please do hit up a DM on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I will ensure I answer you back within, say, 36 hours. So that's the ideal time I take. So on that note, have a safe week ahead. Go smash your work goals, go smash your life goals, and ultimately just take care of you, your team, if you're an employer, take care of your employees, and yes, have a kick-ass week ahead. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.